The envelope sat on Harry Blackwood's desk like an uninvited guest, white, clinical, with the Mount Sinai Hospital logo printed in the corner. It had arrived 3 days ago, forwarded from his personal address to the office because that's where Harry spent most of his time anyway. 6:47 a.m. The city was still waking up, car horns muted by 30 floors of glass and steel. Harry's office overlooked Fifth Avenue, floor-to-ceiling windows framing Manhattan like a painting he'd stopped noticing years ago. At 32, he was the youngest CEO Sterling Finance Group had ever had. Forbes called him the golden boy of Wall Street. His team called him fair, brilliant, driven. Right now, he was just a man staring at an envelope he didn't want to open. Truck double park, watched life continue exactly as it had before he'd opened that envelope. "Not now," he whispered to the empty office. "Not yet." Julia Martinez arrived at 7:30 a.m., same as every morning for the past 2.5 years. She'd started as a temp, worked her way up to executive assistant through competence and a near supernatural ability to anticipate problems before they became crises. At 25, she was supporting her younger sister Elena through college and still managed to make Harry's professional life run like clockwork. The first thing she noticed was the coffee. Every morning, Harry arrived before everyone else and brought coffee for the early staff, Tom from IT, Grace at reception, Sarah from accounting. It was a small gesture that made him beloved in ways his salary could never buy. This morning, the break room counter was empty. The second thing she noticed was Harry's closed door. He never closed his door this early. His philosophy was accessibility. Open door, open minds, he'd say during team meetings. Julia hesitated outside his office, holding her tablet with his schedule for the day. Through the frosted glass, she could see his silhouette at the desk, completely still. She knocked softly. "Mr. Blackwood?" "Come in." His voice sounded normal. Everything looked normal. Harry sat at his desk in his usual sharp suit, papers neatly arranged, computer screen glowing. But something felt off in a way Julia couldn't name. "Good morning," she said, stepping inside. "You have the 9 a.m. with Peterson Financial, lunch with the Morgan team, and the board presentation at 3. I've prepared the—" "Thank you, Julia." He was looking at his computer screen, not at her. "That's fine." She waited. Usually, he'd ask questions, make comments, joke about how the Morgan team always ordered too much food. Today, nothing. "Is there anything you need me to—" "No, thank you." Julia nodded, retreating. As she closed the door, she glanced back. Harry sat motionless, staring at something on his desk she couldn't see. The week that followed felt like watching someone slowly disappear. Tuesday, Harry missed the 9 a.m. with Peterson Financial. Not late, missed entirely. Julia had to reschedule, inventing an excuse about a family emergency. Harry didn't offer an explanation. When she brought him lunch at his desk, she found last night's dinner untouched in the trash. Wednesday, David Williams, the CFO and Harry's closest friend, stopped by Julia's desk. "Is Harry okay? He snapped at me in the budget meeting, over a decimal point." David shook his head. "That's not like him." "I don't know," Julia admitted. "He's been different." "Different how?" "Quiet, distant, like he's not really here." Thursday, Julia stayed late finishing quarterly reports. At 10 p.m., she walked past Harry's office and saw him asleep at his desk, head on his arms like a child. She stood there for a long moment, debating whether to wake him, before quietly leaving. Friday, Harry canceled lunch with investors. No explanation, no reschedule. When Julia tried to discuss next week's calendar, he waved her off. "Just handle it." She'd never heard him say that before. Harry was meticulous about his schedule, involved in every detail. By Friday afternoon, Julia had started keeping notes, not officially, not for any purpose she could name, just observations. Lost weight, suits hanging looser, laughs at jokes but sounds hollow. Left at 6 p.m. 3 days this week, used to stay until 9. Coffee for staff forgotten 4 times. dark circles under eyes. Grace found her at her desk at 5:30. "Julia, honey, what's wrong with Mr. Blackwood?" "I don't know. In 15 years, I've never seen him like this. Yesterday, he walked right past me without saying hello. Harry Blackwood, who remembers my granddaughter's birthday, walked past like I was invisible." Julia looked at the closed office door. "I know. Should someone, I don't know, ask if he's okay? Would he answer?" Grace didn't have a response to that. 3 weeks later, everything changed on a Thursday night that started like any other late evening at the office. Julia was reviewing Q3 reports at her desk, the floor quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning. Most of the staff had left hours ago. She should have left too, but these reports needed to be ready for Monday's presentation, and Harry seemed in no shape to review them himself. Her phone buzzed with a weather alert. Hurricane remains moving through NYC. Heavy rain, flooding expected. Seek shelter. Julia glanced at the window. Rain was already streaking down the glass, the city lights smearing into abstract patterns. She should leave. The subway would be packed with people trying to get home before it got worse. Harry's office door opened. He emerged looking exhausted, jacket off, tie loosened, shirt sleeves rolled up. He stopped when he saw her. "You're still here?" "Same reason you are," Julia said, gesturing to her screen. "Q3 reports don't write themselves." Harry almost smiled. Almost. "You should go home. Storm's getting bad."
Before we continue, let's take this like an ad break. I put a lot of heart into these stories. If you're enjoying them, a like or subscribe would mean a lot. No pressure, though. Just knowing you're here already makes my day.
"So should you. I'll leave soon." They both knew he was lying. Julia turned back to her computer, but she could feel him standing there, hesitating. After a moment, he retreated to his office. She heard the door close softly. By 8:45 p.m., the rain had become torrential. Thunder rolled across the city, rattling windows. Julia's phone lit up with alerts, subway lines suspended, flash flood warnings, shelter-in-place recommendations. Her neighborhood in Queens was in a flood zone. Her apartment was a fourth-floor walk-up, so she wasn't worried about water damage, but getting there safely was another issue. Harry's door opened again. This time he was wearing his jacket, carrying his briefcase. "Julia, you need to leave. Now." "I know, I'm just—" "Now." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "The subways are shutting down. Where do you live?" "Queens, Astoria." "That's a flood zone." "I'm on the 4th floor. I'll be fine." "How are you getting there?" Julia hesitated. "Subway?" "Which is currently underwater." Harry ran a hand through his hair. "My driver called in sick. I'll drive you home." "Mr. Blackwood, you don't have to—" "Julia." He looked at her directly for the first time in weeks, and she was struck by how tired he looked. Not just physically tired, soul tired. "It's a hurricane. I'm driving you home." The use of her first name startled her. He never used her first name. "Okay," she said quietly. Harry's car was a sleek black Tesla in the underground garage. Julia had never been in it before. It smelled like leather and his cologne, something subtle and expensive she'd been smelling for 2 years without ever identifying. The drive started in silence, except for rain hammering the windshield and the rhythmic swish of wipers fighting a losing battle. Manhattan streets were already flooding, water pooling at intersections. Harry navigated carefully, taking alternate routes when main roads were blocked. He drove with the kind of focused precision he brought to everything, or at least everything he'd brought precision to before 3 weeks ago. They were crossing the Queensboro Bridge when Julia finally spoke. "Are you okay, Harry?" His hands tightened on the wheel. She'd used his first name deliberately, matching his earlier familiarity. "Why do you ask?" "Because you're not yourself. You haven't been for weeks." Harry kept his eyes on the road. Rain lashed the bridge, the East River churning dark and angry below them. "I'm fine." "You're not, and you don't have to tell me what's wrong, but please don't insult my intelligence by pretending everything is fine." Silence. The bridge seemed to go on forever. Finally, "No, I'm not okay." Julia waited. Sometimes the best thing you could do was simply wait. But Harry didn't elaborate. They drove through Queens in tense quiet, the car's GPS calmly recalculating around flooded streets. Julia's neighborhood was worse than she had expected. Water pooled mid-street, cascading from overwhelmed drains. Her building was 2 blocks ahead. 1 block. Half a block. Harry pulled over suddenly, jerking the car to the curb. "Harry?" He was breathing heavily, one hand pressed to his side. His face had gone pale, almost gray in the dashboard light. "I'm fine," he managed. "Just need a minute." "You're not fine." Julia's voice was sharp with sudden fear. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. He gripped his side tighter, and she saw his jaw clench. "Hospital. Now." "No. Harry, I'm not asking. Tell me where the nearest emergency room is, or I'm calling 911. "Julia. Now." He looked at her, and something in her expression must have convinced him this was non-negotiable. "Mount Sinai, Queens." Julia grabbed his phone, pulled up the GPS, and started directing him. Harry drove, but his movements were slower now, more careful. His breathing had become shallow. They were 3 blocks from the hospital when he slumped forward. "Harry!" Julia grabbed the wheel, keeping the car straight. "Stay with me. We're almost there. Harry, please." The car drifted to a stop at a red light. Harry was conscious, but barely, his forehead against the steering wheel. Julia made a decision. She climbed over the center console, awkward, desperate, and physically pulled Harry toward the passenger seat. He was taller than her, heavier, but adrenaline made her strong. She shoved him as gently as she could manage into the passenger seat, then climbed into the driver's seat herself.
"So you suffered alone. It's my burden to carry, not anyone else's." "Maybe," Julia said slowly. "I want to carry it." Harry's head turned sharply toward her. "Why?" "Because someone should. Because you're not furniture or a spreadsheet or a quarterly report. You're a person, and people aren't meant to fight alone." "Julia, you don't get to decide what burdens other people are willing to carry. You only get to decide if you'll let them try." They stared at each other. Outside the curtain, the ER continued its chaotic symphony. Inside their small bubble, the world narrowed to 2 people and a truth that couldn't be unsaid. "The prognosis?" Julia asked. Harry hesitated. "With treatment, 50-50. Maybe better, maybe worse. They won't know for months." 50-50. A coin flip. Heads, he lives. Tails, he doesn't. "What's the treatment plan?" "Aggressive chemo, 6 months, maybe longer. Then surgery if the tumor shrinks. Then more chemo. Then we see." "We?" Julia repeated. "I meant I." "You said we." Harry closed his eyes again. "Julia, you can't. This isn't your fight." "Maybe not, but I'm here anyway." David drove Julia home at dawn. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean and exhausted. "You okay?" David asked. "No." "Yeah, me neither." David navigated around debris-slogged streets. "You lied to that doctor." "I know." "Why?" "Because they wouldn't have told me anything otherwise, and someone needed to know. You realize Harry's going to be pissed when he finds out you know.
I don't care. David glanced at her. You're in love with him. It wasn't a question. Julia stared out the window at the rising sun painting Manhattan gold and pink. That's not why I'm doing this. I know, but you are, in love with him, I mean. She didn't deny it. Monday morning, Julia arrived at the office at 7:15 a.m. Harry's office was dark. His calendar showed all meetings canceled for the week. Tuesday, she sent him a text. How are you feeling? No response. Wednesday, she tried calling. Voicemail. Thursday, she stopped by his apartment building. The doorman, trained to discretion, wouldn't confirm if Harry was home. Friday morning, she found a package on her desk. Inside, ginger tea, a note in Harry's handwriting. For the nausea. Thank you for Friday. Please don't come by again. H. Julia stared at the note for a long time. Then she made a decision. Harry's apartment was in Tribeca, all glass and steel and minimalist furniture that looked expensive and felt empty. When he opened the door Saturday afternoon, he looked worse than he had in the hospital. Julia. I brought soup. She held up a container. Homemade. Ginger and chicken. Good for chemo nausea. I told you not to come. I know. I came anyway. They stood in the doorway at an impasse. You don't have to let me in. You don't have to eat the soup, but I'm going to keep bringing it, and tea, and whatever else I think might help. You can throw it all away if you want, but I'm not going to stop. Why? Harry's voice broke on the word. Why are you doing this? Because someone should. That's reason enough. She set the soup container on the floor in front of his door and walked away. From his window, Harry watched her leave, watched her disappear into a cab, looked down at the soup container like it was something dangerous and fragile at once.
The pattern developed over the next 2 weeks. Every other day, Julia would arrive at Harry's building. Sometimes he'd answer the door. Sometimes he wouldn't. She never asked to come in, just delivered whatever she'd brought. Soup, tea, books, flowers once, left a short note and departed. The notes were simple. Still here. You're not alone. Fight. Tuesday's chemo. You've got this. Harry never responded, never thanked her, never told her to stop. But he stopped throwing the containers away. Week 4, everything changed. Julia arrived on a Thursday afternoon with chicken soup and found Harry waiting in the lobby. He looked angry. Why are you doing this? He demanded. What do you want from me? Nothing. Everyone wants something, so what is it? Recognition, promotion, some misguided savior complex? Julia set the soup container down carefully. When she spoke, her voice was calm despite his rage. I don't want anything from you, Harry. Then, you know what I think? Julia stepped closer. I think you're terrified, not of the cancer, of letting someone care. Because if you let someone in, if you let yourself need someone, then you can't pretend you're handling this alone. You can't be the strong CEO who has everything under control. You'd have to be human, scared, vulnerable, and that terrifies you more than death. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? You collapsed in front of me, Harry. You've been suffering for weeks, and you're still trying to push me away because accepting help feels like weakness. Julia's voice softened. But it's not. Letting people care about you isn't weakness, it's courage. I could die, his voice broke. The survival rate is, I know. You know? You know? Julia, I could die in 6 months, a year, 5 years, and you're standing here bringing me soup like that doesn't matter? It matters, but it doesn't change anything. How can you say that? Because I'm choosing to be here, right now, today. Whatever comes next, we'll deal with it, but today I'm choosing you. Harry stared at her. Why? Because someone should, and because... Julia hesitated, then decided truth was all she had left to offer. Because I care about you, Harry. Not CEO you, not Harry Blackwood, golden boy of Wall Street. Just you,
The person who remembers everyone's coffee order and brings flowers to sick kids in the hospital and stayed late to help me fix my first major mistake at work 3 years ago. She smiled sadly. That person deserves someone who'll stay, so I'm staying. Something in Harry broke. He'd been holding everything together for weeks: the diagnosis, the fear, the pain, the exhaustion, the crushing weight of facing death alone. Julia's words shattered whatever fragile wall he'd built around himself. He didn't collapse dramatically, just sort of folded, sank down right there in the lobby, back against the wall, and started crying. Not loud, not theatrical, just quiet tears of someone who'd been trying so hard to be strong and finally had permission to break. Julia didn't try to fix it, didn't offer platitudes or comfort, just slid down the wall beside him and sat there, present, silent, steady. They sat like that for 20 minutes. People passed through the lobby, carefully not staring. The doorman pretended to be very interested in his phone. Finally, Harry spoke. "I'm scared. I know. I've never been this scared in my life. You don't have to be brave every day. Some days you can just survive. That's enough." "I don't know how to not be brave." Julia turned to look at him. "Then I'll be brave enough for both of us until you can be again." Harry met her eyes, found no pity there, no fear, no obligation, just steady, certain presence. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." He didn't invite her upstairs that day, but when she came back 2 days later, he opened the door wider. "Come in," he said quietly. It was the first time she'd been inside his apartment. It was exactly what she expected: beautiful, expensive, and utterly impersonal, like a hotel suite. "It's cold in here," she said. "I keep the AC high, hot flashes from the chemo." Julia nodded, filing that information away. Next visit, she'd bring a soft blanket, something warm and real in all this cold perfection. They sat in his living room, awkward at first. Julia didn't stay long, just an hour. They talked about nothing important: office gossip, a show they'd both watched, Elena's progress at school. Normal things, human things. When she left, Harry walked her to the door. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For staying."
The next 3 months became a rhythm of endurance. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Harry had chemo. Julia started working from his apartment those days, her laptop set up at his kitchen counter while he lay on the couch, exhausted. She didn't hover, just existed in the same space, available but not intrusive. David visited Wednesdays, bringing work updates Harry was too tired to care about, but appreciated anyway. The bad days were terrible. Days Harry couldn't keep food down, days the pain was so bad he couldn't speak, days he looked at Julia with hollow eyes and said, "Maybe this isn't worth it." Those days Julia didn't argue, didn't try to convince him life was precious or fighting was noble, just said, "Okay, but let's get through today. Tomorrow you can quit if you want." Tomorrow he never wanted to quit. The small victories were everything. The day he laughed at something stupid Julia said, really laughed, not the hollow sound from before. She'd been talking about her neighbor's conspiracy theories about pigeons being government drones, and Harry had started laughing and couldn't stop. When he finally caught his breath, Julia was crying. "Why are you crying?" he asked. "Because you're still you. Under all this, you're still you." The day he managed to eat a full meal, Julia had made arroz con pollo, her grandmother's recipe. Harry ate 2 servings and looked shocked. "I forgot food could taste like something," he said. The day Dr. Okonkwo said the tumor hadn't grown, not shrinking yet, but not growing. Harry had gripped Julia's hand so hard it hurt, and neither of them cared. David cornered Julia one Wednesday in Harry's kitchen. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For giving him something to fight for." Julia shook her head. "He's fighting for himself." "Is he?"
because from where I'm standing, he's fighting because you made him believe it was worth it." 4 months into treatment, the scan showed something terrifying. The tumor wasn't shrinking as much as they'd hoped. Dr. Okonkwo recommended a more aggressive protocol, harder drugs, worse side effects. "How much worse?" Harry asked. "Significantly. Nausea, fatigue, neuropathy, possible organ damage, but it's our best shot at shrinking the tumor enough for surgery." Harry looked at Julia. She didn't know what her face showed, but something in it made him turn back to the doctor. "Do it." That night, back at his apartment, Harry tried to push her away again. "You should go, Julia. This is going to get worse, much worse." "I know. I don't want you to see me like that. I know." "Julia, do you want me to leave?" she asked directly. "Not should I. Not this would be easier. Do you want me to leave?" Harry looked at her for a long moment. Something passed across his face. Fear, hope, resignation, relief. "No," he admitted, his voice breaking. "No, I don't want you to leave." "Then stop asking me to." Julia's phone rang at 11 p.m. on a Friday. "Elena." "You sound exhausted," her sister said. "I'm fine." "Jules, you're never fine when you say you're fine. What's going on?" Julia was sitting in Harry's living room while he slept fitfully on the couch, recovering from that day's chemo. She walked to the window, looked out at the city lights. "If I tell you something you can't tell anyone, not Mom, not anyone." "Okay." "Harry's sick. Cancer. I've been helping take care of him." Silence. Then, "Are you in love with him?" Julia pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "Yes." "Does he know?" "It doesn't matter." "Jules, of course it matters." "No, it doesn't. Not until he's better. I need him to know this is real, that I'm not here because I feel sorry for him or because I'm hoping he'll reciprocate. I'm here because he needs someone, and I'm choosing to be that someone, whether he loves me back or not." "What if—" Elena's voice was gentle. "What if he doesn't get better?" "Then we have spent this time with someone I care about. That's enough." 6 months into treatment, Harry looked like a different person. He'd lost 30 pounds he couldn't afford to lose. His hair had thinned, but not fallen out completely. Small mercies. He moved carefully, like his body might betray him at any moment. But his scans were scheduled for the next day. The scans that would tell them if the aggressive protocol had worked. That night, Julia came over with dinner she knew he probably wouldn't eat. Found him standing at his window, staring out at nothing. "What if it didn't work?" he asked without turning around. Julia set the food down, walked to stand beside him. "Then we try the next thing." "What if there is no next thing?" "There's always a next thing. Different treatment, different doctor, experimental trials. There's always something." "Julia." He finally looked at her. "What if I'm dying? What if this is it?" She met his eyes steadily. "Then we make the time you have left matter. But Harry, I don't think you're dying. I think you're fighting, and I think tomorrow's scan is going to show that fight is working." "How can you be so sure?" "Because you're still here, because you're stronger than you think, because—" She reached out, took his hand. First time she'd initiated physical contact, beyond steadying him when he was weak. "Because I believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself." Harry looked down at their joined hands. "I need to tell you something." "Okay? Then tell me tomorrow."
Dr. Okonkwo's office was exactly what you'd expect. Medical degrees on the wall, pamphlets about cancer treatment scattered strategically, a box of tissues on every surface. Harry and Julia sat side by side in chairs that had probably held hundreds of terrified patients. Julia's hand found Harry's automatically. He didn't pull away. Dr. Okonkwo entered with a tablet, her expression professionally neutral, the face doctors learn when they have to deliver news that could go either way.
The scans, she said without preamble, show significant improvement. The world stopped. The tumor has shrunk by 40%, more than we'd hoped with this protocol. Your markers are down. The aggressive treatment worked. Harry couldn't speak. Julia felt tears streaming down her face before she realized she was crying. "What does that mean?" Harry finally managed. "It means you're a candidate for surgery. We can remove the tumor. It'll be complex. Recovery will be long. But Harry," Dr. Okonkwo smiled, a real smile that transformed her tired face, "you're going to survive this." They made it to Harry's car before either of them fell apart. Julia cried silently in the passenger seat. Harry sat with his hands on the steering wheel, not moving, just breathing, just alive, just surviving. They sat in that parking garage for 20 minutes without speaking. Finally, Harry reached over and took Julia's hand. She looked at him, found him already looking at her. "You stayed," he said. "I told you I would. Every day, through all of it, when I tried to push you away, when I was mean, when I was scared, you stayed." "Harry, let me finish." He took a shaky breath. "That night in the car, the storm, I collapsed because I'd skipped my pain medication for 3 days." Julia's eyes widened. "Why would you?" "Because I wanted to feel it, the pain. I wanted proof I was still here, still alive, still real. I was so tired of feeling numb, of just existing. I wanted to feel something, even if it hurt." "Harry." "And then you sat in that hospital, and you kept coming back, and you made me want to stay. Not just exist, stay, be here, fight." His voice cracked. "You saved my life, Julia." "The doctors saved your life. They saved my body. You saved me." They sat there in the underground parking garage, holding hands, both crying, both relieved, both terrified and hopeful, and exhausted and alive. Julia leaned over, meant to hug him, comfort him, but when she got close, when their faces were inches apart, something shifted. The air changed. 6 months of proximity and care and fear and hope crystallized into something electric. Harry moved first, closing the distance between them. The kiss was soft, tentative, tasting of salt from tears. Julia's hand came up to his face, feeling the sharp angles that hadn't been there before cancer, the fragility that hadn't existed 6 months ago. It lasted maybe seconds before Harry pulled back, breathing hard. "No," he said, "not like this." "Harry!" "Julia, I want this, but not now. Not when I'm still," he gestured vaguely at himself, "not when I'm broken." "You're not broken." "I'm 30 pounds underweight, exhausted from chemotherapy, and about to have major surgery. I'm the definition of broken." He cupped her face gently. "You deserve better than this. You deserve someone who can take you to dinner without needing to lie down halfway through. Someone who can kiss you without worrying about passing out." "I don't care about any of that." "I know. That's what makes you extraordinary. But I care." Harry's thumb brushed her cheek. "Let me do this right, Julia. Let me get through the surgery. Let me heal. Let me be the man who can stand beside you, not the man you have to hold up. Please." Julia wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was already that man, but she saw the determination in his eyes, the need to prove something to himself. "Okay," she whispered, "but Harry, you're not doing this alone. I'll be here through the surgery, through recovery, through all of it." "I know, and that's everything." They drove back to his apartment in silence, still holding hands over the center console. The surgery happened 3 weeks later, 8 hours in the operating room. Julia sat in the waiting room with David, Elena, who'd taken a bus from school, and Grace, who'd closed reception early and refused to leave. When Dr. Okonkwo finally emerged, still in scrubs, Julia stood so fast she nearly fell. "He's okay. We got clean margins. The tumor is gone. He'll need follow-up treatment, but Julia," the doctor smiled, "he's going to be okay." Julia's knees gave out. David caught her. Recovery was slow. 2 months before Harry could walk without pain, 3 before he could eat normally, 4 before the exhaustion started lifting. Julia was there for all of it, helped him with physical therapy exercises, celebrated when he could climb a flight of stairs without stopping, cried with him on bad days when setbacks felt like failures. They didn't talk about the parking garage kiss, didn't talk about what came next, just focused on healing, on rebuilding, on surviving. 1 year and 2 weeks after the letter that changed everything, Harry Blackwood returned to Sterling Finance Group. He arrived at 6:45 a.m., same as he used to. The office was empty except for Grace, who burst into tears when she saw him. "Mr. Blackwood!" "It's good to see you, Grace." He'd brought coffee for the early staff, Tom, Sarah, a few others who trickled in, the tradition restored. At 7:30, Julia arrived, stopped short when she saw Harry's office light on, saw him at his desk, laptop open, looking more like himself than he had in a year. She knocked. He looked up, smiled, a real smile, the one she'd missed. "Good morning, Miss Martinez." Julia raised an eyebrow. "Really? We're back to Miss Martinez?" "We're at the office." "Mr. Blackwood, I've seen you vomit into a bucket. I think we're past formalities." Harry laughed. Actually laughed. "Fair point. Good morning, Julia." "Better. Welcome back." "It's good to be back." They went through his schedule, fell into old rhythms, but something was different. The air between them hummed with unfinished business. At 6 p.m., after everyone else had left, Harry appeared at Julia's desk. "Can I give you a ride home?" Julia looked up. "No storms tonight?" "Good. I prefer clear skies for what I'm about to do."
Harry didn't drive toward Julia's apartment. Instead, he navigated through Manhattan to their office building, parked in the garage, and led her to the elevator. But instead of going down, he pressed the button for the roof. "Harry, what? Trust me." The rooftop was off-limits to most employees, but Harry had keys to everything. He pushed open the door to reveal the city spread out below them, lights beginning to sparkle as dusk fell. The skyline was breathtaking, the Empire State Building lit purple, One World Trade Center catching the last rays of sun. Harry turned to face her. He looked different than he had a year ago. Thinner, yes, a few gray hairs at his temples that hadn't been there before, lines around his eyes from pain and fear and fighting, but alive, whole, here. "A year ago," he began, "I thought I was dying." "You were fighting." "Because you stayed." Harry took her hands. "When you had every reason to leave, when I gave you every reason to leave, when I was difficult and scared and trying to push you away, you stayed." "Harry, let me finish, please." He took a breath. "I've had a year to think about what to say, a year of sitting in hospital rooms and doctors' offices and my apartment that felt like a tomb until you showed up with soup. And what I realized is that I'm not the same person I was before the cancer. I'm not the CEO who had everything figured out. I'm not the man who kept everyone at arm's length because vulnerability felt like weakness. Who are you then? I'm someone who knows that time is precious, that tomorrow isn't guaranteed, that the only thing that matters is who you choose to spend your days with." Harry squeezed her hands. "And Julia, I choose you. I want to choose you every day for whatever time we get." Julia felt tears starting. "Harry!" "I'm not asking you to stay anymore. You've already proven you'll do that. I'm asking something different now. I'm asking if you'll let me stay with you, if you'll let me love you the way you deserve to be loved, if you'll give me the chance to be the partner you were to me, even when I didn't deserve it." "You always deserved it." "Did I? I was an idiot, trying to be strong when what I needed was to let someone in. You taught me that.
You taught me that needing someone isn't weakness, it's the bravest thing we can do." Julia was fully crying now. "I love you. I've loved you since the moment you stopped smiling, and I realized I'd do anything to see it again. I've loved you through every hard day and every small victory. I loved you when I didn't know if you'd survive, and I love you now that you have."
I love you too. Harry's voice was thick with emotion. I've loved you since you lied to that doctor and called yourself my fiancé. Since you brought me soup I didn't ask for. Since you sat on my bathroom floor on the worst days and just stayed. I love you, Julia Martinez, and I want to spend whatever time I have left proving it. Julia laughed through her tears. You just got a clean bill of health and you're already talking about time running out? Cancer teaches you that time is always running out, for everyone. The only difference is some of us know it. Harry smiled, so I'm not wasting another second. He kissed her then, not the tentative, tear-stained kiss from the parking garage. This kiss was certain, deliberate, full of promise. A year of waiting and hoping and healing poured into this moment on a rooftop above the city they both loved. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Julia rested her forehead against his. "I have a question," she said. "Anything. That day in the hospital, when I lied and said I was your fiancé, best lie anyone ever told on my behalf. Did you know then that I loved you?" Harry considered. "I think part of me knew, and part of me was terrified of it, because loving someone means giving them the power to hurt you, and I was already hurting so much I didn't think I could survive more. And now? Now I know that love doesn't hurt you. It holds you together when everything else is falling apart." He kissed her forehead. "You held me together, Julia, even when I was too stubborn to admit I needed it." They stood there as the sun finished setting, as the city lights grew brighter, as the world continued spinning around them. Two people who'd fought death and won, who'd learned that survival wasn't just about living, it was about having something to live for. "Take me home," Julia said softly. Harry smiled. "Yours or mine? Doesn't matter, as long as we're together." 2 years later. The Manhattan city clerk's office wasn't romantic in the traditional sense. Fluorescent lights, government workers processing forms, other couples waiting their turn. But Julia didn't care about romance. She cared about the man standing beside her, holding her hand, alive and healthy and here. Harry Blackwood at 34 looked different than he had at 32. The gray at his temples had spread slightly. He'd gained back the weight, but would never be quite as solid as before. His quarterly scans still caused anxiety spirals that Julia helped him through, but he was cancer-free, 2 years and counting. David stood as best man, grinning. Elena was maid of honor, crying already. Grace sat in the small audience, clutching tissues. A few other close friends and colleagues rounded out the group. Nothing fancy, nothing elaborate. Just two people who'd learned that life was fragile and precious, choosing to build whatever time they had together. The ceremony was short. The officiant read standard vows. When it was their turn to speak, Harry went first. "Julia, you saved my life. And I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean you literally saved me. You showed up when I was trying to face the worst thing that ever happened to me alone. You stayed through every hard day. You never asked for anything in return. You just stayed." His voice cracked. "And now I get to stay with you for however long we get. That's all I want, just time with you." Julia's turn. She looked at this man she'd loved through crisis and recovery, through fear and hope. "Harry, you didn't need saving. You needed someone to fight with you, to sit with you in the dark and remind you that morning comes, to believe in you when you couldn't believe in yourself. She squeezed his hands. You taught me that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up every day, even the hard days, especially the hard days. I showed up for you, and now I get to keep showing up for the rest of our lives. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss. The kiss was witnessed by everyone who'd been part of their journey. David cheered. Elena cried harder. Grace whispered, "Finally." 6 months later, on a random Tuesday morning, Julia woke to find Harry already awake, watching her. "Creepy," she mumbled, still half asleep. "Can't help it. Still can't believe you're real." "Very real. Very tired. Very much going back to sleep." "Julia." Something in his tone made her open her eyes. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. That's what's strange." Harry propped himself up on one elbow. "I'm happy. Genuinely, completely happy. And I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the cancer to come back, for something to go wrong."
Harry, but what if it doesn't? What if this is it? What if we get 50 more years of random Tuesdays where we wake up together and nothing dramatic happens and it's just life? Julia smiled, reached up to touch his face. Then we're the luckiest people alive. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that even when things are normal and boring and routine, you'll remember this, that we fought for this, that every random Tuesday is a gift. I promise. But Harry, you have to promise me something too. What? Promise me you'll stop waiting for disaster, that you'll trust this, trust us, trust that sometimes people fight and they win and they get to be happy. That's allowed. Harry was quiet for a moment. Then, I'll try. That's all I ask. He kissed her, slow and sweet and certain. I love you. I love you too. Now let me sleep. Some of us have to work today. You're working from home. I checked your calendar. Still counts as work. Want coffee? Yes, but the good coffee, not your terrible office coffee. Harry laughed, getting up. My coffee is excellent. Your coffee tastes like disappointment. And yet you married me. Moment of weakness. He paused at the doorway, looked back at her. Julia was already burrowing back into the pillows, hair a mess, face peaceful. His wife, his partner, the woman who'd stayed when staying was hard. Thank you, he said softly. For what? For not leaving. That day in the hospital, all the days after. For staying. Julia opened one eye. Harry Blackwood, if you wake me up to be sentimental, I'm divorcing you. No, you're not. No, I'm not. She smiled. But I am going back to sleep, so go make terrible coffee and let me rest. Yes, ma'am. Harry went to the kitchen, made coffee that was actually quite good despite Julia's protests, and stood at their window looking out at the city. 2 years cancer-free, a wife he loved, a life he'd almost lost and fought like hell to keep. Some people don't fight because they're strong. They fight because someone stayed, because someone saw them at their worst and chose to see them through, because someone brought soup and tea and showed up on the hard days with nothing but presence. Love didn't cure Harry's cancer. Medicine did that. Surgery and chemotherapy and excellent doctors. But love gave him something to survive for, someone to come home to, a reason to take the next breath and the next and the next, until breaths became minutes, became days, became a life. And that, Harry thought, as Julia called from the bedroom asking where her coffee was, that was everything.
I love reading your comments. Seriously, they make my day. Drop a comment and tell me what you think about this story.